first thought becomes a final thesis. Jumbled slides transform into a polished keynote, and that midterm assignment gets a lot less mid. Because the road to great ideas is littered with bad ones. You just have to keep going until something clicks. Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/college.
No matter what car you drive, you know that new tires can be an unexpected expense. Don't wait any longer because your locally owned Big O Tires has the perfect tires for you. Back up and running fast with no credit needed financing made easy. Work with multiple lending partners so the financing is tailored to you. So if you need new tires, you can't afford to wait. Get into your locally owned Big O Tires. Team you trust.
Thinking about selling your car? Get a real offer worth real money from CarMax. Then take 7 days to think it over. That's it. No haggling, no hassles, no pressure. Get all the details and a real offer today at CarMax.com. Want to drive? CarMax.
Working forest professionals in the U.S. plant more than they harvest, while also caring for water, wildlife, and more. It's how we grow a sustainable future. Learn more at workingforestinitiative.com.
Welcome to the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. Now get ready for Strange Things with Joshua P. Ward.
Welcome to our podcast. Please be aware the thoughts and opinions expressed by the host are their thoughts and opinions only and do not reflect those of iHeartMedia, iHeartRadio, Coast to Coast AM, employees of Premier Networks, or their sponsors and associates. We would like to encourage you to do your own research and discover the subject matter for yourself.
Exercises and weird experiments you can do at home, and a lot more. On this edition of the show, Apotheosis. You know what that is? Plus, the Brothers Grimm and Mother Goose. How does it all tie together? We'll see. And by the way, if I have time, I might just go ahead and debut a new short segment on this particular episode. I like to keep things positive, as you probably know. However, it might be nice to get a little steam off once in a while. So I think I might introduce a new segment called Things That Suck. But let's go with Apotheosis, shall we? When I was a kid, my family took us on our first family vacation to Washington, D.C., the capital of the USA. And since then, I've been back many times throughout my life, but it was certainly an impressive introduction to our nation's capital. And a lot stood out in my mind, but one thing that definitely stood out was our trip to the Capitol building. And when you go to the U.S. Capitol building there in D.C., you walk at one point underneath the big dome in the rotunda. And if you crane your neck back and you look straight up, you see a glorious painting way up there, a fresco. It's 180 feet above the rotunda floor. That's 55 meters. And the figures that are painted are up to 15 feet tall. That is 4.6 meters. So they're very visible from the floor far below. This dome was completed in 1863 by a Greek-Italian artist named Constantino Brumidi. And the thing that's sort of astounding about it is that, well, by the way, this is always kind of interesting. He was paid $40,000 to do this job. And let's see, that would be $841,304 in today's money. But this guy, this artist, he had worked for 3 years in the Vatican. He had served several aristocrats as an artist for palaces, villas. He had, quite obviously an amazing background, which is why he got hired to do this. But here's what you see if you've never actually looked into this or been to DC or whatever. This painting depicts George Washington, and he's sitting there among the heavens, swirling all around him in an exalted manner, more or less becoming a godlike being. Now, of course, George Washington was the first U.S. president and commander-in-chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. So when you look up, he is sitting there draped in purple, which was worn by generals of the ancient Roman Republic during their triumphs. There's a sort of a rainbow arch at his feet, and he's flanked by goddesses and gods and various figures from classical mythology. I won't go into all the little details because it would take me a lot of time to do that, and you can go and look this up for yourself if you're interested. But he's sitting up there looking very much like sort of a godlike being. I'm actually looking at a close-up of it right now, and it's impressive. This painting, it's called The Apotheosis of Washington. And as I stood there staring at this and thinking about it, and I've always been a big fan of American history, fascinated by all of it, I actually have I guess it's a death mask. Maybe it's a life mask. I don't recall if it's a life mask or a death mask of George Washington hanging on one of my walls. And I had never heard this word apotheosis before. That was the very first time. Do you know what apotheosis means? Well, apotheosis refers to the highest point of development, culmination, perfect example, the elevation of a person to divine status or deification. So what we're talking about here is the glorification of a subject to divine levels, and the treatment of a human being or any other living thing or an abstract idea in the likeness of a deity. And it's been used in art pretty much since the beginning of time. A lot of religions actually have this kind of imagery being used, not surprisingly. In religion, apotheosis is a feature of these religions that believe that there's a possibility of newly created gods, a polytheistic belief system. And of course, the Abrahamic religions of Islam and Judaism don't allow for this, though many recognize minor sacred categories such as saints in Christian theology as being somewhat like that through canonization. You find it in all kinds of other, various forms in religion, Hinduism. But yeah, it shows up a lot in art. And so again, without digging too deeply into examples of this, I think you kind of get the idea. It's fascinating to me because what we're really talking about here is this question about whether or not it is possible for a human being, because that's just what George Washington was, a human being, to become some kind of a divine-like being. And I've always thought that maybe this is why we have this happening with our modern day superheroes, Because, like, for example, one of my favorite movies is called Watchmen. Let's see, what year did that come out? That out in 2009. It's based on a comic book. Actually, I guess it's more like a graphic novel. But anyway, so in this story, this epic story, there is a scientist. He's a human physicist or lab technician of some kind, and he gets trapped in a chamber and hit with an amazing amount of radiation, and it destroys his body and then reassembles it with all these blue lightning bolts and sparks. And after that, he gradually starts to appear around the property. He appears first as sort of like a circulatory system, and then he appears like a few days later with muscles, and then eventually he ends up being this huge, majestic, glowing blue guy who is an example of perfection with amazing blue body parts, and he is called Dr. Manhattan. And so Dr. Manhattan is now, he has basically got the power to do whatever he wants. And it's kind of fascinating to see how that even though he has this power, he still has a lot of sort of like petty human-like emotions and feelings. And he finally just gets fed up with humans altogether and decides to teleport himself to Mars, where he can live all by himself on this planet. That would be an example of apotheosis. I guess you could say that, I don't think that Superman would necessarily be apotheosis, because in Superman, he was already born with these powers. But maybe you have like Green Lantern. He was a regular man who obtained this magical green ring that gave him certain powers, not absolute power. Or like maybe the Flash. I think there's a story where the Flash, he turns into a divine sort of being who has these godlike powers. Wolverine and the X-Men series and all that. Wolverine, he was already born with some freakish abilities, but he was put into a laboratory and treated with this special process where they put this metal, I think it was called like adamantium or something, on him, and turned him into a much more superior being. You have examples of this. And maybe I'm not doing the best job of digging into it, but I started thinking about this. Is there any way that apotheosis is a literal thing? Can it be a literal thing? And then I started really letting my mind soar, and it led me to the theory of art and artists. And you'll see how that ties into, well, things that we all find kind of interesting, I imagine. Things like the Brothers Grimm and who do you think was around first? So I'll tie all this together. I always do, I think. Hey, listen, it's that time of year. I'm doing spring cleaning, and I have a collection of crazy, amazing things like you would not believe, and I'm going to be selling some of them off. Some of them should already be selling by the time you hear this, and I mean stuff from my storage units. I hate to let them go, but I need the space. Go to joshuaperin.com and sign up for my free e-newsletter, and that's the only way that you're going to be notified of where you can go if you might be interested in at least looking at some of this stuff. Sign up for the newsletter at joshuapewarren.com. I am Joshua P. Warren, and you're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network, and I will be right back.
This message is brought to you by Smiths. If you're into entertainment podcasts, you know it's all about the details that pull you in and keep you engaged. The right details make everything feel seamless. And even when plans change, Smiths makes it easy to shift to dinner, so you can still get something on the table and keep the rest of your night on track. Order online and pick up groceries at your local Smiths. Smiths. Fresh for everyone.
Keeping a working forest growing takes a massive commitment. That's why working forest professionals plant over 1 billion seedlings annually in the U.S.
at amahealthversushype.org. That's ahealthvshype.org. Bite into a stacked sandwich made with Hero Bread or a fully loaded bagel. And the only thing you'll think is delicious. You won't think it's up to 19 grams of protein, but it is. You wouldn't believe it has 11 to 32 grams of fiber, but it does. Hero Bread makes loaves, buns, tortillas, bagels, and noodles packed with taste, but without all the net carbs. We're talking 0 to 5 grams net carbs per serving. With Hero Bread, there are no compromises, just flavor. There's none of the stiff baked goods you'd expect from better for you brands. There's just the soft, fluffy bread you crave. Plus, small batch drops of indulgent favorites, like the popular 2-gram net carb Hero Croissant and 3-gram net carb Hero Pain au Chocolat. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code IHEART at checkout. That's code IHEART at hero.co. All figures per serving of Hero Bread. See nutrition facts on hero.co.
This is Iris Palmer from Against All Odds with Iris Palmer. Okay, you guys, can we talk about something? McCrispy strips and Caesar sauce. That's the pairing that got me seriously batting my eyelashes. You heard right, la pareja del momento. The now crispier McCrispy strips and Caesar sauce at McDonald's is going to be your new favorite go-to. Porque honestly, es la combinación perfecta. Extra crispy McCrispy strips and creamy Caesar sauce, all wrapped up in one perfect bite. It's quick, it's delicious, it's going to be your new favorite go-to cuando andas corriendo de un lado para otro. Add a Diet Coke and you're ready to conquer. Lo que sea. Tiene el crunch, tiene el flavor, and it's only $2.99. Pricing and participation may vary. So if you haven't tried it yet, corre. Try the Caesar snack wrap at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Radio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I am your host, the Wizard of Weird, Joshua P. Warren. Beaming into your wormhole brain from my studio in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, where every day is golden and every night is silver. Giadato Zume. I'm a little stuffy. I should have taken my allergy pill before this show. You know, the Greek word, the word apotheosis, it comes from a Greek word that means to deify or make a god. And I was thinking about that. And it's really interesting because soon there is a major motion picture coming out called The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. And it is based on an epic poem that was written by an ancient Greek writer named Homer. And Homer wrote that about 2,700 to 2,800 years ago. And think about the idea that there was some guy, not a superhero, not a superhuman, just a man who could write, who wrote this story 2,700, 2,800 years ago. And it has been passed along all this time to now be a major motion picture in this era. Does that seem like maybe a form of apotheosis that, I don't know, if somebody like even as great as George Washington could literally be elevated up and then transform into a divine being, and even if he could be, then he probably wouldn't be like a human anymore. Who knows what he would be like? But so it's kind of paradoxical to think about it that way. But if you look at it more realistically, humans do create art.
Hi. Bye. Sorry, the sunset. That's what it looks. Alright. Time to work. Damn. Bye. Well, I gotta go. Gotta go work.